This situation arose due to a panoply of reasons, including retirement of staff, promotion exercises, as well as the availing of vacation leave. To palliate the shortages, the Ministry has had recourse to the services of supply teachers for both primary and secondary schools. Furthermore, the Ministry, through the Public Service Commission, is in the process of recruiting educators for primary and secondary schools. As regards private secondary schools, each has its own recruitment process and as per their respective entitlements. Mr. Speaker, sir, as a date, we have noted that there are a few areas, a few subjects where teachers are lacking, but necessary measures are being taken at the level of the Ministry.
The Honourable Minister informed the House whether recruitment of educators in secondary school was affected because of the regulation, Education Amendment number 3, Regulations 2022, which barred graduates who did not have PGC or alternative qualification from joining the teaching profession. And ultimately, in the Cabinet meeting Friday, 24th February, this decision was reviewed and moratorium was given for degree holders.
Not at all, Mr. Speaker, sir, because the measure was taken on the 21st December 2022, and normally schools recruit their teachers prior to the entry of school in January, and we expect that the recruitment process occurs before that. But nevertheless, the measure taken, the regulation proposes that teachers that are recruited should be bearers of a PGC. Now, the amendment that we have brought was simply to allow teachers who are already following courses at the PGC or enrolled for such courses to be allowed to be taken as educators by schools.
As at 7th March, a shortage of around 400 educators was being deployed, and until last Wednesday, 22nd March 2023, there was interview process going on for supply teachers, and in spite of that, 400 teachers are missing, only 200 eligible persons turn up for interview. What measures will be taken to ensure that the second semester is not affected like the first semester?
Mr. Speaker, sir, we have already recruited the supply teachers. As I've just stated, there are a few areas where it seems that there are no teachers applied for the post of supply teacher, but we are still looking at the possibilities of having teachers who have just been retired to join the system. But as at date, we have already filled in the posts.
Semester is coming to an end, Honourable Minister, for subjects like biology, design and communication, maths, business and technology. Students have missed a whole term. What measures will be taken so that these students, their studies are not affected?
I'm sure the rectors of the schools will work with the staff and see how they can remedy the situation, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Next question.
B27, please.
Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to part A of the question concerning baby S, I am informed that the baby is still admitted at hospital in view of her needs for targeted medical treatment and intervention in order to support her specific health concerns. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to part B of the question, the fact-finding committee submitted its report on the 22nd of November last year. Actions already implemented are as follows. The National Children Council Board has been reconstituted. 7 caregivers who were on duty that night have been interdicted on the 27th of January this year. There is a police inquiry ongoing, and further actions will obviously be taken in the light of the findings of that inquiry. The management of shelters presently being run by the National Children Council will be handed over to NGOs, and to that effect, bids have already been launched. Full psychosocial support has been extended to the mother and relatives of the baby. Procedures to declare the child has already been initiated by the tardy declaration unit of my ministry. Mr. Speaker, sir, other recommendations of the fact-finding committee require further consultation and certain amendments to legislations. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, my ministry is ensuring close monitoring of the situation.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président. Can the Minister state why the suspension of the caregivers took place more than 3 months after they were aware about the alleged child ill treatment and more than 2 months after the provisional charge was lodged? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the suspension and interdiction of the said caregivers happened following an inquiry. It is not that the suspension will happen overnight. There has to be an inquiry. The inquiry has to submit its findings. And in the light of those findings, the board took the decision to interdict the 7 caregivers on the 27th of January of this year.
Si la ministre serait-elle disposée à déposer sur la table de l'Assemblée les recommandations de ce fact-finding committee?
Mr. Speaker, sir, as I mentioned in my reply to a PNQ on the matter last year, due to the very sensitive nature and personal medical information of the minor, the fact-finding committee report cannot be tabled to the House.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président. La ministre pourrait-elle éclairer la Chambre sur le fait que les faits remontent au 21 octobre et la lettre de suspension date du 26 janvier. Mais elle peut confirmer que pendant ce laps de temps, les caregivers étaient on duty et se retrouvaient tous les jours dans la salle de conférence du NCC. Merci.
Mr. Speaker, sir, as I have just replied, the 7 caregivers were interdicted from their duties on the 27th of January of this year, 2023. And I think the honourable member is stepping slightly out of the limits of the question that she herself has put forward. So I would invite the honourable member to bring a specific question pertaining to the caregivers to be answered from the House.
Honourable Dano.
B28.
Mr. Speaker, sir, let me first of all thank the honourable gentleman for providing me the opportunity to enlighten the House on the major developments concerning this project. As the House will recall, in the budget speech of June 2020, my colleague, the Minister of Finance, Economic Planning and Development, announced an unprecedented effort by government to build 12,000 residential units over a period of 3 years for families with monthly income of up to 60,000 rupees. Following the 2021 budget speech and subsequent consultations, it was decided that the new Social Living Development Limited, NSLD is the acronym, a special purpose vehicle incorporated as a wholly owned company, subsidiary of the National Housing Development Company Limited, NHDC, be the implementing agency for the construction of these 12,000 housing units. The NSLD became operational in October 2020. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, this unprecedented measure, it's good to recall, was announced just after the first lockdown due to COVID was lifted. At that point in time, no one could have foreseen that with a resurgence of the pandemic worldwide, Mauritius would be subjected to a second lockdown, which obviously had a serious negative impact on the implementation of the project, resulting in inevitable and significant delay. That second lockdown extended from March to April 2020 to 2021, and it stands to reason that during the lockdown, No site visits or land surveys could be carried out. Moreover, neither the NSLD nor any relevant department or services, both in the public and private sectors, were operational. Despite the prevailing situation, my ministry, in collaboration with the NSLD, began the tedious exercise of identifying land which would be suitable and buildable. I think we targeted some 58 sites across the island of Mauritius. Now, with a view to limiting expenditure, the priority was to identify state land and land vested in state-owned companies. Where it was not possible to secure such land, the NSLD embarked upon the acquisition of private land through private agreement or compulsory acquisition. That exercise is still ongoing. In respect of each and every plot of land identified, site visits had to be carried out with all the concerned authorities to first ascertain the suitability of the plot. It was only after clearances were obtained from all relevant authorities that the NSLD could then arrange for geotechnical investigations to be carried out to ascertain the buildability of the land. In regard to private land, acquisition procedures could only be initiated after conclusive geotechnical reports. It is worth noting, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the limited number of firms undertaking geotechnical investigations and due to the limited availability of appropriate equipment on the market have also been a cause of delay beyond the control of the NSLD. For instance, in the case of 2 plots of land of a total of 15 arpents identified at Parlement, the relevant geotechnical surveys took more than a year and in the event yielded a negative result in as far as the land was not found to be suitable, to be buildable. Nonetheless, the NSLD concurrently prepared the request for proposals for the appointment of project management consultants for construction, as is the usual practice for major government projects. The main task of these consultants consists in the preparation of concept designs, architectural drawings, and detailed structural designs, and thereafter the tender documents for construction works. Now, the request for proposal for the appointment of consultants was launched in January 2021. Just let me recall, the announcement was in the budget of June 2020. In 2021, January 2021, we launched the request for procurement, the request for proposals, for the appointment of consultants. Following tender procedures, only 3 out of 10 bids were found to be technically and financially responsive. So, following the advice of the NSLD's legal advisor, the procurement exercise had to be cancelled. So the NSLD launched a reformulated request for proposals in August 2021. In the meantime, we had the second lockdown. And following this second request for proposals, 8 consultants were appointed in March 2022. The consultants set themselves to task, and once the tender documents for construction were ready, a first tender exercise for construction this time was launched by the NSLD in August of 2022. Unfortunately, the quotes received were beyond the 30% increase in construction costs as assessed by Statistics Mauritius at the time. In view of the significant implications, both for the total project cost and the eventual selling price of these units, in September 2022, the NSLD firstly reviewed its specifications for the housing units to align strictly with NHDC specifications for low-income households. Secondly, reviewed the contractual conditions to render the project more attractive to potential bidders. And thirdly, decided to annul the ongoing bidding exercise and to launch a second bidding exercise based on modified tender documents. The second bidding exercise was thus launched on 22nd November 2022, and the closing date was 22nd December 2022. Again, the prices quoted were extremely high, varying between 3.5 million and 12.5 million per housing unit. It is a posit to note that the unit cost of the last NHDC social housing project had been in the region of 1.8 million at the time of contract. 1.8 million compared to 3.5 to 12.5 million in December 2022. Now, it is, Mr. Speaker, essential to understand that the fundamental objective of government is to provide adequate and decent housing at an affordable price to the needy and less fortunate sections of the community. In the circumstances, government in December 2022 decided to proceed with the construction of 12,000 housing units in phases. The first phase of which would consist of the construction of 8,000 housing units of 60 meters square each, that is 400 units per constituency, targeting households with a monthly income of up to 30,000 rupees. So the more needy, the less fortunate. Now the first phase of the project includes on-site social amenities and makes provision for essential ecological measures, including rainwater harvesting, solar energy panels, and appropriate waste disposal systems. Furthermore, so as not to repeat the previous ineffective tender exercises, the NSLD in February 2023 adopted a new procurement strategy based on the design and build concept and selective tendering. Thus, it was decided that the project would be entrusted to locally incorporated large contractors, building and civil works, as registered with the Construction Industry Development Board, the CIDB. On 3rd February 2023, the NSLD launched an expression of interest targeting all CIDB-registered 19 large contractors, building and civil works, the main feature of the expression of interest being a predetermined price of 2.7 million rupees per housing unit, inclusive of on-site infrastructural works. Only 16 such large contractors were responsive and 14 found to be compliant with the requirements of the expression of interest. As at now, 28 of the 39 earmarked sites for the first phase have already been placed at the disposal of the NSLD. Moreover, letters of intent have been issued to the 14 selected large contractors. Preparation of concept designs, master plans, and programs of works by the contractors are underway, and once approved will be followed by letters of award and handing over of sites. Government, Mr. Speaker, sir, will remain true to its commitment to the people of Mauritius, and despite the unfavorable prevailing conditions, shall spare no effort to ensure the timely completion of the first phase of the project.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister is aware that for allocation of a house, there is a salary threshold that he has mentioned, and for family to be allocated of a housing unit. This government has introduced minimum salary and has also given compensation of 1,000 rupees, thanks to the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister. And thus the family no longer fall under the previous threshold. Will his ministry review the salary threshold for allocation of housing unit?
I must consider, Mr. Speaker, that the point is very relevant. Initially, the project targeted working class and middle class households of the country, providing for an offer of social housing for household incomes of up to 60,000 rupees per month. The first phase that is now being envisaged by government is targeting the most needy sections of the community. Hence, the 30,000 monthly income ceiling, which is that of the NHDC up until now. I have received requests similar to that raised by the Honourable Gentleman, and have asked the NHDC to analyse its actual waiting list, after which I shall discuss the matter with my colleague, the Minister of Finance.
In answer to PNQ in 15th November of last year, the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister mentioned that the subsidy which government will provide to household earning less than 30,000 rupees would be 67%. So they would have to pay 1/3. So based on the revised cost of 2.7 million rupee per house, can the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister confirm that those households will now have to pay 1/3, which is 900,000 rupees for these social houses?
I do not have an answer to that question at the present time, but shall be glad to come back to it at a later stage. As I said, the prime concern of government has been to focus on affordability. It makes no sense for government to invest in social housing if at the end of the day, those houses are not affordable for the poorest sections of the community. So a lot of groundwork has been undertaken. Unfortunately, I do not have at hand right now the precise figures, but I shall be very happy to communicate same to my colleague of the House.
So, with reference to the housing scheme you mentioning, may the Honourable Minister inform the House whether this scheme is applicable to other outer islands of the Republic of Mauritius, including Rodrigues?
When the scheme was formulated, the objective was 12,000 houses for the 20 constituencies of Mauritius. That is 600 per constituency. In the case of Agaliga, there is a separate, specific housing project being handled by the NHDC, again, which, to my great frustration, has been very much delayed by COVID, and we are trying to catch up, and that project is very much on for Agaliga. As regards Rodrigues, initially the understanding was that within the budget of the Rodrigues Regional Assembly, the funds were available for specific housing schemes. Thereafter, there have been requests for additional provision for social housing, and the matter has been considered by a joint team of the Ministry of Housing and the Ministry of Finance that visited Rodrigues a short while back, and the recommendations are under study at the level of the Ministry of Finance and my ministry.
Last question, Honourable Danu.
Can the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister inform the House, such a big project, 12,000 housing unit, what are the measures that his ministry is going to take to ensure that the project is finished on time?
Very good question. It's an immense challenge, Mr. Speaker. It is an immense challenge, and it is a race against time. Just as much as was the case when 20 years ago we undertook to double the number of state schools in Mauritius within a few years. And what we've done is to set up a fast-track committee that has already had its first meeting to consider how different ministries can collaborate and coordinate their efforts to ensure that we expeditiously get through the first phase, which is clearances and approvals and building permits, so that very soon the construction works can actually begin. So I had the opportunity some 10 days ago of chairing a first meeting of that fast-track committee, which comprised a number of ministries, including the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Energy, the Ministry of Labour and Commerce, Ministry of the Environment, the Ministry of National Infrastructure, Ministry of Local Government. So working together to review progress and to ensure that permits and clearances are delivered in good time. It also includes all the authorities that are concerned with building and land use permits at the level of local authorities, from the Traffic Road Safety Management Unit to the Land Drainage Authority, Wastewater Management Authority, CEB, CWA, and so on. And again, I repeat, we shall leave no stone unturned to make sure that we follow this project very closely and meet our schedule.
Next question.
B29.
Mr. Speaker, sir. As announced by the Honourable Prime Minister, pre-primary education will be free for children aged 3 to 5 as from January 2024. Mr. Speaker, sir, some 21,500 children in some 750 schools will benefit from this measure. A survey carried out in 2022 revealed that this sector is being serviced by 1,000 teachers and 750 non-teaching staff. A committee is currently working on the project implementation and defining the modalities for the grant-in-aid system. Mr. Speaker, sir, once these have been worked out, they will be presented to stakeholders. They will equally be invited to join the grant-in-aid scheme. I wish to highlight that the measure was welcomed by the teaching community and the parents as well. I wish to mention that UNESCO recommends that pre-primary, at least 1 year of pre-primary education should be free and compulsory. We are going a step further, Mr. Speaker, sir, with 2 years of pre-primary education free.
Monsieur le Président, la ministre sera d'accord avec moi que ce projet suscite pas mal d'interrogations, malgré le fait qu'elle prétende qu'il y a eu consensus autour du projet. Il y a pas mal d'interrogations de la part des partenaires éducatifs sur les modalités autour de ce projet. Donc, elle a informé la Chambre que les modalités ne sont pas prêtes encore. Quand est-ce que ces modalités seront prêtes? Quand est-ce qu'on saura quels sont les critères d'éligibilité concernant autour de ce projet?
Monsieur le Président, je viens de mentionner que nous sommes en train de travailler sur les modalités, mais nous avons aussi informé le public à travers une conférence de presse que le projet est en cours, nous sommes en train de travailler et qu'on allait inviter tous les stakeholders à prendre connaissance des modalités. Nous sommes en train de travailler sur un projet très important et nous voulons que d'ici 2024, tout soit prêt. D'ailleurs, nous avons déjà fait comprendre aux stakeholders qu'ils seront invités à intégrer le système, à se joindre au système de grant-in-aid. Mais nous avons aussi fait comprendre que nous n'allons pas stem the tide of diversity, Mr. Speaker, sir. On va permettre à ce que certaines institutions continuent à opérer comme ils le veulent, librement, fee-paying, tout comme c'est le cas pour le primaire, secondaire et l'enseignement supérieur.
Next question.
B3E. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to inform the House that in December 2022, a contract was signed by my ministry with the salvage company Bridge Maritime Limited to proceed with the pollutant and removal and scuttling operations of grounded casualty vessel FV Yufeng number 67 at Île du Cid, Saint-Brandon on 5th of December 2022. On 5th of January 2023, the salvage team reached the casualty site and managed to board the casualty vessel for only 3 hours, and it started the preparation of the salvage equipment and its transportation on board the casualty vessel. Unfortunately, the salvage team could not proceed with the installation of the pump on the casualty vessel on 6th, 7th, and 8th January 2023 due to bad weather conditions prevailing in Saint-Brandon, that is, high wind speeds and swells of 2 meters and above. Upon improvement of the weather condition on 9th January in the morning, a team of 6 persons were able to transfer and install the pumps and other equipment on board the casualty vessel in the morning. This exercise took them around 6 to 7 hours. However, no diesel oil was pumped from the oil tank as the team had to leave the casualty vessel at around 16:30 hours due to heavy swells again. The heavy swells continued on 10th January 2023. On 11th January 2023, the National Emergency Operation Command, NEOC, met under the chair of Honorable VPM, Honorable Anwar Hasnu, in the presence of the representative of salvage company. It was decided that the salvage team would reattempt to board the casualty vessel on 12th January morning for the pumping of oil as there was a forecast for good weather conditions on that day. However, this attempt was also unsuccessful. On 12th January 2023, a meeting chaired by the Honorable Prime Minister was held with relevant stakeholders to discuss on the way forward regarding the wreck and pollutants removal operation, and the salvage master was called in the meeting to clarify certain issues regarding the conduct of the operations. The Mauritius Meteorological Services confirmed the weather condition would deteriorate during the next 15 days or more so, and also there would possibly be cyclonic condition over Saint-Brandon during this period. So there was also no visibility as to when the weather condition would allow resumption of the salvage exercise. In this respect, it was decided that the contract for both the removal of the pollutants and the wreck be terminated. The salvage company was informed accordingly, and the team was demobilized from the casualty site on the same day, that is 12 January 2023. Another meeting was held on 16 January 2023 under the chair of the Honorable Prime Minister with the salvage master and all stakeholders, whereby the salvage master confirmed that it was too risky to continue with the salvage operation, which would put the salvage team's life at risk. On 20th January 2023, government decided that the responsibility for the wreck and pollutants removal operation would be looked henceforth by the Ministry of Local Government and Disaster Risk Management, and at the level of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Center, under the chair of the Honorable Hasnu, Vice Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to payment for this operation to be made to the salvage company, I wish to inform the House that an amount of 471,761 USD, representing mobilization costs, has already been paid to the contractor on 21st of December 2022. As regards the additional amount of USD 463,197.55 USD claimed by the salvage company as per the BIMCO wreck hire contract, following the advice of the Attorney General Office, my ministry is conducting a due diligence exercise with regard to the representation made by the salvage company as to whether the proposed plan of action could really have been executed, being given the conditions, the weather conditions and the sea condition at the casualty site are always rough with heavy swells. On completion of the due diligence exercise, the advice of the AG's office would be sought anew based on the information received from the stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, sir, after several meetings, in fact, held with the Taiwanese local fisheries representative in Mauritius, it was only yesterday, that is 27th of March, that the owner of the vessel responded and informed that they will give due consideration with regard to removal of pollutants, including now that they have responded. The matter is being followed by the Director of Shipping. I wish to take this opportunity to extend my gratitude to the Government of the Republic of India for its precious assistance for the operation conducted on 9th and 10th of March by the Marcos Commander of the National Coast Guard to proceed on board the casualty vessel with the assistance of the helicopter of the Indian Navy ship INS Tyr. 18 bags of solid waste weighing approximately 350 kg and comprising all fishing lines, plastic material, fishing buoys and nets, which were the main pollutants on board the vessel and harmful to the marine lives, were removed from the casualty vessel. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm informed that as of date, there is no oil spill, dead fish, bird, debris, or tow balls observed along the shoreline.
So, Honorable Minister, you have spent nearly 500,000 USD. Can you confirm to the House what was the volume of diesel and pollutant that was present at that time of wrecking? How much has been removed, and how much is still on board of the vessel now?
I already said, Mr. Speaker, sir, as I mentioned, that the diesel oil could not be removed, and whatever solid pollutants which were removed has been done by the Marcos Commander of the NCG.
The volume, the quantity
of
diesel.
Diesel has not been removed, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, can the Minister confirm that since January this year, there has been no real effort from his ministry to attempt to pump the diesel, despite there has been international organizations that approach Mauritius to give a helping hand?
Mr. Speaker, sir, in fact, we have approached international organizations through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In fact, all support that we have, in fact, the UN experts were in the team who attended the salvage operation. So there was no, it was only advice. It was not like giving us means to do the attempt for the operation for removal of pollutants.
May I know from the Honourable Minister, you have mentioned that you're in contact with the owners. Have the owners agreed, one, to refund the $500,000 that government has been paying to the salvage operation, and two, to remove the vessel, not just the pollutant, but to remove the vessel from the coral reef, which is damaging coral reefs?
Mr. Speaker, sir, as I didn't mention this, but in fact, why we proceeded with the salvage operation, because there was no response in the beginning at all from be it the owner or the PNI. So we had to proceed after several meetings. With regard to, so as I said, there was a lot of pressure put on the local Taiwanese representative, and they only responded yesterday, and now they are saying that they will give consideration because pressure has been put maybe from the government side also of Taiwan. So now they are responding, and they have said they are going to reimburse whatever amount has been spent, whatever claim we're going to put. Definitely, Mr. Speaker, sir, under the convention, there are different avenues for the government of Mauritius to recoup expenses incurred in relation to salvage and wreck removal. So we have already drawn the attention of the owner and the Taiwanese representative that will definitely pass on the expenses incurred by government to them.
Last question.
What commitment are you taking to the House today? Are you giving us guarantee that you're going to avoid another Wakashu and that you're going to take all necessary precaution to protect the environment? Can you please take this commitment to the House today?
Mr. Speaker said it's as if we can prevent accident. So
Order.
this is, I don't know, it's a question. But anyway, I wish to assure the House, Mr. Speaker, sir, long before, it's almost since 1 year, we have stopped issuing fishing license to Taiwanese vessels. This is, we have already taken measures. And in fact, whatever Taiwanese vessel which are fishing under the IUTC convention, when they come to our port for transit, obviously when they leave the port, there are a lot of security check are being done on this vessel before they leave, because they are obviously traveling away. Both, let me apprise the House that this vessel didn't have any Mauritian fishing license. It fished under the IUTC convention. So obviously when they come to Mauritius, they have to go through the EZ. And in fact, we have also drawn the attention of the IUTC with regard to such type of vessel operating in the Indian Ocean.
Next question.
B31.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the methadone substitution therapy, MST, program is a fundamental harm reduction strategy regarding opioid use disorder, that is, heroin intake. The MST program has been put in place in 2006 following recommendations of United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC. Since the introduction of the MST program, 12,714 patients have been induced on methadone. Mr. Speaker, sir, there are at present 5 methadone daycare centers where patients are induced on methadone. These are Sainte-Croix Methadone Daycare Center, Bulux Methadone Daycare Center, Frangipane Center, Orchidée Center at Bransegal, Mayberg Methadone Daycare Center. To highlight, this center, Orchidée, is dedicated to female patients only. The waiting time for an opioid drug user to be induced on methadone varies depending on the region and is on average 3 weeks. Patients are referred to a methadone daycare centers by NGOs or by medical practitioners, public or private, or by self-referral. A patient is taken care of in the center by a trained multidisciplinary team comprising of a psychiatrist, medical health officer, specialized nurse, psychologist, specialized healthcare assistant, and social worker from non-governmental organizations. After a comprehensive workup, patients are induced on methadone as per management guidelines. Mr. Speaker, sir, the number of beneficiaries induced on methadone was 917 in 2020, 1,159 in 2021, and 1,567 in 2022. It is to be noted that these measures are taken not to decrease intake on MST program, but rather to increase intake of methadone of individual patients. A patient on methadone may require lifelong treatment, but very few patients may be engaged in tapering their methadone dose under supervision of their medical team. Measures that have been taken to decrease the waiting time are as follows. Increase in the intake of patients on the program through the opening of 2 new centers, namely Centre Frangipane in 2021 and Centre Orchidée in 2022. Furthermore, intakes have also been generally increased in all our centers over the past 2 years. In addition, residential induction on methadone has been introduced with the opening of Centre Frangipane. Methadone induction has been scaled up since early 2022 in prisons of Mauritius. A national waiting list is being introduced in order to decrease waiting time for patients. This will allow patients not to be restricted to a certain methadone daycare center for his induction and for induction to take place promptly. Mr. Speaker, sir, these measures are successfully helping in making the waiting time as short as possible. Furthermore, the whole program of methadone substitution therapy has been reviewed to address these shortcomings. In this respect, protocols have been worked out to take full charge of patients in a holistic manner, from the medical aspect to the psychosocial aspect, as well as emphasizing on rehabilitation and their reinsertion in the mainstream of society. This measure concerns mainly methadone patients who are taking methadone for years without proper follow-up. The protocols have been worked out by a technical working group comprising officers of my ministry, representatives of NGOs involved in the implementation of harm reduction strategies under the guidance of Dr. David Mété, chef de service d'addictologie, Centre hospitalier universitaire de La Réunion. The ministry officially launched the new protocols not later than last week. The new protocols are also meant to enable methadone induction to be carried out in a low threshold basis. That is, there will be no need for the patient to stay the whole day at the methadone center for induction. Patients have to stay around 3 hours in the center only. The waiting list for induction in daycare centers will thus be eliminated. This induction will be carried out in the 5 existing methadone daycare centers, which will be transformed into polyvalent consultations for substance use with a multidisciplinary approach, including doctors, psychologists, social workers, and with the active participation of NGOs.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. In your answer, you mentioned about the new protocols. Can the Honorable Minister bring more details, shed more light upon the new protocols on the management of opium disorders on methadone, and whether it has been updated, and what are exactly those protocols? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, sir, as I mentioned, so these protocols, these guidelines have been updated recently with the collaboration of Dr. Mété from Centre hospitalier of Réunion Island. Why we have to update these protocols? Because if we look at the UNODC and our national drug control master plan, that is to reduce drug use, improve health status, prevent future damage by reducing risk of complication. So that's why it's been updated. So many patients are in methadone for many years, and we have identified the shortcomings of these patients. They need proper follow-up, they need reinsertion in the society. So all those have been taken into account, especially in view of the waiting list also. Patients have to wait to be induced on methadone. So that's why the protocol have been worked out in such a way that we can implement all the recommendations through Dr. David Mété and his team.
The Honorable Minister, during your answer, you mentioned about the induction. Can you just shed some light upon this, like whether the induction without admission, is it considered as a dangerous practice, or is it like a normal practice? Thank you.
The induction of methadone. So, obviously, induction of methadone is this is the only substitution therapy that we have for addicts, for those who are on taking heroin. So this methadone, this induction of methadone has a process. We have to follow some guidelines before inducing these patients on methadone, and that's why it is the view is to accommodate patients as fast as possible, so that there is no waiting time, and that's what the minister has been worked out recently.
Thank you. Can I ask the Honourable Minister, while there is a waiting time, there are cases of theft of methadone at methadone distribution centers by the medical staff themselves, and this is being sold outside, sometimes even to children.
Yes, I believe we all have recently on news, we all came to know, and thanks to police, the good work that the police department is doing, is able to track down all those who are involved in trafficking of methadone. But basically, the traffic of methadone is because some people, they don't want, methadone is not a drug that will bring some high or some kind of dependency. It is only a drug that will relieve you for someone who is taking heroin and getting the withdrawal symptoms, that is the craving for the drug, and methadone will reduce that craving. So what's happening is the traffic of methadone is for those who are not willing to attend centers because of some reasons. And that's why there is the traffic of methadone. So the ministry is working a way to find out how we can get these patients who are willing to take methadone, but don't be on that process of, probably not to be exposed to others. They are taking methadone. So we are working on that, how to get some kind of facilities for them also to get methadone as quick as possible.
Next question.
B32.
Monsieur le Président, je tiens à remercier l'honorable membre pour cette question. En ce qui concerne la partie A de la question, j'ai été informé par la GRA que pour la saison des courses 2023, le Horse Racing Committee de la HRD a délivré 20 licences d'entraîneurs de courses de chevaux, dont 2 ont été délivrées à des étrangers qui sont de nationalité sud-africaine. Je vais, si l'honorable membre est d'accord, déposer la liste de ces entraîneurs, au lieu de les dire un par un. Donc, donc je dépose la liste des entraîneurs de course qui possèdent une licence délivrée par la DRH. Monsieur le Président, en ce qui concerne la partie B, la question, je dépose également une liste de tous les candidats qui ont postulé et participé à l'examen d'entraîneur de chevaux organisé par la HRD en 2022 et 2023 respectivement, y compris les noms de ceux qui ont réussi les examens. J'ai fini, j'attends aussi là.
Bien sûr, j'ai des questions supplémentaires. Monsieur le Président, avant même que la saison ne débute, un entraîneur sud-africain, Gareth Van Zyl, a rendu sa licence à la GRA. Le ministre peut-il nous dire dans ce cas précis s'il y a des conditions qui sont attachées lorsqu'un entraîneur étranger rend sa licence? Si oui, quelles sont ces conditions? Et sinon, pourquoi?
Monsieur le Président, je suis en train de chercher certaines informations. Je n'ai pas ces informations avec moi. Je ferai un plaisir de déposer et de donner les informations à l'honorable membre. Je viens d'apprendre, comme l'honorable membre, qu'il y a eu un entraîneur qui a arrêté d'être, qui a rendu le tablier, comme on le dit. Donc, je chercherai l'information. Je n'ai pas cette information avec moi.
Président, que l'honorable ministre déposera la réponse dans un délai raisonnable.
Avant la semaine prochaine.
Très bien, je vous remercie. Monsieur le Président, le ministre peut-il aussi nous dire, j'espère qu'il pourra répondre à cette question, ce qu'il adviendra des 18 chevaux qui étaient sous la responsabilité de l'entraîneur Van Zyl et les palefreniers qui travaillaient avec lui?
Monsieur le Président, je vais ce genre d'informations, je ne l'ai pas avec moi. Je suis désolé, je ne suis pas un entraîneur, je ne vais pas aux courses, je n'ai pas ces informations. Je vais vérifier. Faites-moi avoir les questions, je vais trouver ces réponses.
Try to relate the questions to the main question. It would be...
Cette fois-ci, que l'honorable ministre pourra répondre.
Vous m'écrivez toutes les
questions. Alors,
Monsieur le
Président, l'honorable ministre peut-il nous dire si tous ceux qui postulent pour devenir entraîneur doivent-ils obligatoirement passer par une épreuve écrite? Et si c'est le cas, comment se fait-il qu'un ancien jockey, qui malheureusement ne sait ni lire ni écrire, a obtenu sa licence d'entraîneur?
Order.
Je vais trouver les réponses. Je vais vous donner toutes ces réponses. J'ai pas ces informations.
Honorable member, let us be clear with one thing. Your question, 10 lines question, you should relate your supplementary question to ask clarification about your main question. Please go ahead. Next question. Ask your supplementary question.
Related to my initial question. It's not my fault if the Honourable Minister cannot reply.
Okay, so this question has sufficiently been canvassed. You have no more supplementary question, I guess. Next question.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président. B33.
Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to part A of the question, the residential care institution for children known as Pure Mind Heaven was registered with my ministry on the 19th of March 2021 and is presently accommodating 25 children, 7 boys and 18 girls aged between 5 and 17 respectively. As regards part B of the question, Mr. Speaker, sir, I am apprised that since its coming into operation, 40 monitoring and supervision visits, including surprise and late-night visits, have been effected by enforcement officers of my ministry. Recommendations to improve on the environment and infrastructure of the institutions have been made and consistent follow-up maintained throughout. Shortcomings were flagged to the management of that institution and a reasonable moratorium was granted for redress and corrective actions. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am also informed that Pure Mind Haven has benefited an amount of 500,000 rupees from the National Social Inclusion Foundation for maintenance, repairs, embellishments, following the recommendations made by the enforcement team of my ministry.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. J'ai en ma possession un rapport très détaillé et très accablant du ministère sur la gestion, comme l'a si bien dit la ministre, catastrophique du shelter Pure Mind Heaven, que je dépose sur la table de l'Assemblée nationale. On parle de surpopulation, ratio enfants-carers pas conforme au Place and Safety Regulation 2019, des locaux insalubres, des étrangers qui ont accès au shelter, un personnel non qualifié, un gate non cadenassé. Donc, je dépose le document. La ministre pourrait-elle nous expliquer comment son ministère a pu accorder une licence à ce shelter situé au premier et deuxième étage sans aire de jeu? Le rez-de-chaussée est une résidence privée et un autre bâtiment qui sert de store dans la même cour avec des va-et-vient tout le long de la journée. Merci.
Mr. Speaker, sir, with your permission, I would like to peruse the report that the honourable member has just tabled before I answer the question. But one part of the question that she has put forward, I can, with pleasure, answer that one. At the time of registration, can I answer you? You're already raising your hand. At the time of registration, Mr. Speaker, sir, which is the 19th of March, 2021, Mr. Speaker, sir, I've given the opportunity, I've given the decency to the honourable member and members of the opposition whenever they intervene or put questions to listen, to talk. So when I'm replying to a question put by their own colleague, nobody is decent enough to listen to the reply. Can I carry on, Mr. Speaker, sir, with your permission? At the time of registration, which I stated in my original reply, on the 19th of March, 2021, that institution had satisfied all the conditions of compliance. And as I stated in my earlier report, during monitoring visits, shortcomings were flagged and a reasonable moratorium was granted to the institution for redress, including the provision of a fund of 500,000 rupees by the NSIF, the National Social Inclusion Foundation, for them to bring the changes required to up the standard and meet the criteria. Nevertheless, once the moratorium expires, the site visit that is scheduled for follow-up will be carried out, and if the institution is found not to be up to the criteria that is stipulated in the regulations, then obviously appropriate actions will be taken.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. En passant, je tiens à déposer un autre document sur la table de l'Assemblée nationale où c'est écrit clairement que the Ombudsperson for Children paid a visit to my shelter written by the director, Madame L.G. Donc, the Ombudsperson paid a visit to my shelter and said it's not fit for kids. Alors, la ministre, je dépose le document. La ministre est-elle au courant de la grande insécurité qui prévaut dans ce shelter, qui est dépourvu d'espace de jeu pour les enfants? Je dépose une photo bouleversante et je suis sûre que cette photo ne laissera personne insensible. Vous voyez sur cette photo 3 enfants. Je vais déposer le document, ne vous inquiétez pas. 3 enfants de ce shelter qui sont sur le balcon au 2e étage. Ils ont attaché plusieurs draps et un autre enfant se trouve au rez-de-chaussée et ces 3 enfants essayent de remonter cet enfant sans passer par les escaliers et au vu et au su de tout le monde. Est-ce que la ministre est consciente de la grande insécurité qui prévaut et quelle action compte-t-elle prendre par rapport à une situation où ces enfants étaient menacés de mort?
Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to reassure the House that security, safety, welfare, protection of the children of this Republic remains an utmost priority of this government and that of my ministry. Like I said in my earlier reply, my original reply, there have been shortcomings, including the state of the second floor balcony that the picture, the honourable member, I presume from here, I cannot see it, was brandishing. And again, I reiterate that there is a moratorium for redress. In the meantime, following the recommendations of the enforcement team of my ministry, there has indeed been a decision that should there not be any noticeable corrective measures taken by that institution, our kids will be, arrangements will be made for them to be transferred to another residential care institution, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honourable Member, I have read your report. I'm in possession of this report, and I can notice that there has been some tampering with the report itself, and I don't know. I will give a ruling concerning this report, whether we can accept it or not in the House. Reports are made to be authenticated. Reports are made to be genuine. A report cannot be tampered with. Put your last question.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, mais juste à titre d'information, j'ai juste biffé le nom d'une personne dessus. Alors, très bien. Monsieur le Président, plusieurs critères doivent être respectés pour obtenir le financement et parmi un minimum de 2 ans d'opération. La ministre pourrait-elle indiquer à la Chambre pourquoi cet abri, Pure My Heaven, a bénéficié des financements à peine 3 mois d'opération, tout en sachant que le personnel n'avait pas et n'a toujours pas l'expertise nécessaire dans la protection de l'enfance. Merci.
Before the Minister gives the answer, let me give my ruling on this report. This report also has been tampered with, and this picture cannot be authenticated, and I will give a strong ruling on pictures being circulated in the House from both sides of the House. Both sides of the House, I say. Both sides of the House, I say. So I will give a strong ruling concerning these pictures, and let us be more serious about circulation of fake reports and pictures. Minister, you may continue with your answer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Yes, coming to the registration of Pure Mind Haven residential care institution and how come they are benefiting from funding. Funding is disbursed by the NSIF, as you might be aware, or if you're not, the National Social Inclusion Foundation, following close monitoring and depending on whether the institution meets the requisite criteria. Should they not be meeting all the criteria, again, I say it again, there is a certain amount of moratorium that is given to these places to bring corrective measures, whether it is a caregiver ratio, whether it is a training, whether it is infrastructural redress. There is a certain leeway, a period of time that is granted to that place so that they can bring the changes required. Should they not be able to comply during that moratorium period, following visits, regular visit by enforcement team, then a decision is made based on the findings after following the visit. So,
next question.
B34.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am informed that there is no state land lease that refers to any locality by the name of Terre Coupée, Suriname. So the Honourable Lady will bear with me if I offer an answer of a general nature to her question. The current policy pertaining to annual rental payable by any lessee holding a building site for residential purposes is based on the monthly family income, that is the household monthly income, at the time the lease is granted. This policy dates back to 2013. I am tabling the relevant information pertaining to annual rental claimed for state land leases for residential purposes. And I would request that I have 3 copies, if one could be immediately made available to the Honourable Lady. Accordingly, the annual rental payable in respect of leases of state land, albeit of the same size and in the same locality, may vary significantly depending on the household monthly income at the time the lease is granted. As regards industrial site leases, the annual rental is as per the second schedule of the State Lands Act.
Next question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Second, the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, State Fees Ministry has put on record the number of people living in these, on these leased lands in Mauritius.
If the Honourable Lady is asking for the total number of lessees of state land for residential purposes, no, I do not have the figure, but I will undertake to communicate same to the Honourable Lady.
Some concrete constructions, some two-story houses are often constructed on these leased land, and it's like that everywhere. And today we would like to know if the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister can state the steps before being given authorization for construction procedures on the leased lands, please.
Again, if a lease over state land is granted for residential purposes, then the lessee obviously is entitled to build. But what type of house, what height of house, depends on the relevant permit that will be granted by the relevant local authority.
Last question.
We also see leased land converted into concessions of concrete houses, where most of the people have built their homes, but there is in the middle of these concessions, 1 or 2 families waiting since 30, 40, maybe sometimes 2 generations for a contract, while the others around have already obtained permission, authorization, and have been given a contract for construction. Can the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister give us the reasons why such situation?
I'm not sure I understand the question, Mr. Speaker. Permits for construction would be granted by the relevant authority, the lessee having to apply for a building and land use permit or a development permit, depending on the case.
MP O'Meara.
B35. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to part A of the question, I'm informed that on 3rd February 2023, both baby M and baby C were admitted at the nursery of Dr. A.G. G2 Hospital. After the daily ward round, baby C was discharged by the pediatrician at 12:15 hours. At the time of discharge, when the mother of baby C attended the nursery, the latter was wrongly handed over baby M. A quarter of an hour later, the mix-up was noticed by the charge nurse. The mother of baby C was immediately contacted by phone, and she attended the nursery with baby M within 1 hour. This matter is viewed with serious concern by the consultant in charge of the unit and the administration of the hospital, and the case has been referred to the Medical Negligence Standing Committee for an in-depth investigation. Mr. Speaker, sir, in regard to part B of the question, I wish to inform the House that DNA tests are usually carried out in cases of trisomy and Down syndrome, and the tests are performed in South Africa. In this particular case, a DNA test was not recommended as the babies were of different blood groups. Both babies were differentiated by their weight, height, length, and physical appearance. A repeat of blood grouping was conducted to confirm the identity of the babies. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to part C of the question, I wish to inform the House that Ministry has reinforced the protocols in place at the postnatal unit are as follows. At the time of birth and at the time of discharge of a baby, 2 nursing officers are now required to identify the baby and ensure proper handling over after all information are duly recorded and cross-checked with the newborn baby chart. A newborn baby would now bear 2 bracelets, one over the wrist and second one across the leg as a measure of additional precaution. The attention of nursing staff has also been drawn regarding the exercise of diligence and professionalism in delivery of their duties, and all medical and paramedical staff are strictly required to comply to clinical guidelines which are being implemented in all units of the hospitals.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, this is a very tragic incident that happened. Does the minister not believe that it was the duty of either the consultant in charge or the sister in charge to inform the mother of baby M that her baby has been in custody with a different person for more than an hour?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I share your views, and this is, in fact, it is the duty of the team at the nursery to inform the mother of that baby who has been carried by the other mother, and I think that it is very important to inform the mother. Yes, I agree with you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Honourable Minister confirm to the House today that he will take steps to inform baby mother and father of baby M of such incident?
Mr. Speaker, sir, once the case is referred to the MNSA, it is the MNSA to give their views, and whoever have to be taken, whoever is negligent in this case, they have to bear the consequences.
The Honourable Minister has stated that this matter is viewed with great concern. Can I ask him whether he has met with the parents and ascertained with them whether this exercise that was performed at the hospital, meaning blood group, height, weight, and appearance, that they are happy with this and they are happy that the baby that they are holding on is their real baby?
No, I believe, Honourable Member, you will agree with me. Once the case is referred to some committees for an investigation, it is not proper for me at this point of time to call. Let the inquiry be over and let the procedures be respected. Who has to be, to be taken to task, and whether the recommendation is whether to inform the parents. I don't think it is proper at this time to conduct such an exercise.
Mr. Speaker, United Nations and World Health Organization have recommended double identification of neonates at birth, including arm wristband and leg band. Why it is now, after such an incident, your ministry have recommended through the pediatric consultant to implement such in Mauritius? It is a sort of après la mort la tisane. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, sir, Honourable Member will know very well. He has been in this service for many, many years, and I believe he should be, during that time he was in service, should have given the advice for the ministry to implement such a recommendation. Unfortunately, he is not there for some reasons, but it is all, I believe, his team, gynecologist, pediatrician, whether in the private or the public, it is a concern for the Mauritian population to guide the ministry that such advice should be given to officers working in the different units to know how to implement. Unfortunately, that never come from even the associations of pediatricians or gynecologists. That never come up. And in fact, the ministry take some decisions, take some steps how to improve this the identification of patients.
Next question.
B36.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm informed by the Land Drainage Authority that there are 16 flood-prone areas within the township of Cupip, which I'm tabling now. Mr. Speaker, sir, as per the LDA, there are 75 drains project for the town of Cupip, which are to be implemented by the different agencies, including 32 by the Municipal Council of Cupip at an estimated cost of 303 million rupees. Another 40 would be carried out by NDU and 3 by the RDA. I'm also tabling the list of the 32 sites which is going to be done by the Municipal Council of Cupip, along with the respective status, revised estimated cost, and start and completion date. As a date, 9 of the drain projects have already been completed. 1 is at the construction stage, 15 at tender stage, and 7 at design stage. I'm going to...
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, can I know from the Vice Prime Minister, since he said in his reply in PQB 754 on 3rd of November 2020, where he mentioned that there were 22 high-risk flood-prone areas in Cupip. May I know how many projects have been completed from these 22 flood-prone areas?
I've just got the Mr. Speaker, sir, I've just got the latest from LDA. whereas they kind of lump them to 16 flood-prone areas. And there are 75 drains which kind of cater for this. And I've just mentioned, your question was about what the Municipal Council of QAPIP has done. So I've just mentioned there are 32 cases, drains are being done by the Municipal Council, and I've given you the status for each of them. Was a completion, it has been completed or not. If you want, I've got a list, I can go one by one if you want. I can do that. And you have NDU. No, I've already tabled the report, and I've mentioned there are 40 drains are being done by the NDU and 3 by ODA. I've mentioned that, and you've got it here. You're going to have all the dates, when the project was started, when completed, if they have been completed, or if they are 10-day stage, or what.
From a previous reply again, it was in 11th of May 2021. The Minister said in his reply that there were almost 35 million of rupees of projects which were ongoing. Maybe I can give him a copy of his answer so that he can reply to me. I can give you the details in the meantime. Rampasat, Ramjin Lane, Résidence Les Jasmins, NSDC, so far 0. NSDC in QAPIP, Stevenson Street, Morcellement-en-Thème, Jekyll Street, all these encore 0 plombage.
Okay, I can take the list as well. I'll tell you what has been done, what's on tender. At Morcellement-Belle, QAPIP, 10-day stage, 14 million, is starting on the 23rd of May to start and to be completed on July, 23rd of July. That's number 1. Number 2, Paration Street, Les Casernes, completed, already completed, 400,000 rupees, done by Ramlo Limited. It started on the 5th of March, 2021, and ended on the 1st of November 2021. River Lane, Robinson, completed, 2 million rupees, Ramlo Limited. It started on the 5th of March 2021 and completed on the 1st of September 2022. Next one, Malherbe, Impasse Juma at Malherbe, at designing stage for 150,000 rupees. It will be starting on the 23rd of June and completed in August 2023. Next one, Camp-Lévier, Zilbert, Zozon. Camp-Lévier, 10-day stage, 38 million rupees, starting in April 2023, and it's going to end in March 2024. If you want me to carry on, I've got another 32. You want me? I've already given to you. I've already submitted the list. Okay?
I think you had enough.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Next question.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président. B37.
What is happening? There's a question on. You had your question.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am informed that court orders for the placement of minors M and D at Relay Shelter Cap Malheureux were issued on the 7th of December 2021 and on the 27th of October 2022, respectively. Thank you.
Monsieur le Président, je suis juste abasourdi, franchement choquée, parce que je suis en présence des minutes of proceeding de la Children's Court qui confirme que ces 2 mineurs, M et D, ont été placés illégalement au shelter de Cap-Malheureux, aussi connu l'oiseau du paradis. Comment peut-on oser dans cette chambre dire que tout est en ordre? Et je dépose les minutes of proceeding. Voilà. J'aimerais savoir ce que la ministre a à dire, mais je vais sur ma première supplémentaire. La ministre pourrait nous indiquer pourquoi le mineur de 15 ans a été déscolarisé lors de son placement illégal au shelter L'Oiseau du Paradis et forcé à suivre un cours technique alors qu'il se débrouille bien au collège, et l'autre frère de 13 ans s'est retrouvé à l'hôpital Brown, c'est quoi? J'arrive, mais je dois expliquer, monsieur.
You explain too much.
Non, il y a 2 minutes.
Other people have their questions.
Je suis sûre que vous êtes très sensible aux enfants vulnérables, placés. On est en train de parler d'un cas de grande inégalité. Vous vous rendez compte, l'autorité a placé illégalement.
You're making a speech. This is not Parliament.
Alors la ministre peut-elle confirmer que l'aîné, le mineur M, a été bien déscolarisé d'un collège de Goodlands pour être admis dans un collège technique, et le plus jeune, le mineur D, s'est retrouvé à l'hôpital psychiatrique de Brown-Séquoia alors qu'il n'a aucun antécédent psychiatrique, juste parce qu'il a été récalcitrant et a refusé de manger, écoutez bien, un plat de biryani brinjel. Merci.
Mr. Speaker, sir, once again, there has been minutes of proceeding that have been brandished in this August Assembly. I will wait for the report that was flashed to be authenticated before I can pronounce myself on that, and to come to the question put forward by the honourable member. I am not aware of each and every case that comes to the child development or child protection services, or to that effect to the family protection services of my ministry. That is not exactly the role of the minister in charge of a portfolio that wide. But coming to not attempting, to answer the question of the honourable member of the opposition, I have just replied that there are court orders that were issued on these specific days, and if her report that she tabled is authentic, I will look into it and move on from there, take it from there, more like. With respect to all the information that she has raised concerning the minor, who is 17 years old, and that he was forced to quit his studies and forced to undertake a technical vocation at a particular institution, educational institution, I will have to go and verify her claims, whether they are authentic.
Let me stop you there. Let me give my ruling.
Okay.
The document I have in front of me is manipulated. It is a summon. It's not a minute of proceeding, it's summon.
No, it is a minute.
It is not minute of proceeding, it is a summon.
It's not a summon.
I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the House. You can only talk to me on a point of order.
I will raise it. I'll raise it afterwards.
And so, this document is not acceptable.
On a point of order, sir?
Yes.
On a point of order, I'm looking at the document that you referred to. And this is the document that is, and at the heading is written Children's Court, and it is written with the hand of the person presiding the Children's Court, and it is signed by the registrar of the court. And it basically says exactly ruling, and the court is writing its ruling. when the court writes its ruling and talks about the minutes of proceedings,
what is your point of
my
order?
point of order is...
You are just explaining what is your point of order.
My point of order is, Mr. Speaker, is that you are wrong. This is not a summons. This is minutes of proceedings. That is my point of order.
I ruled you have no point of order because you haven't raised any point of order, any standing order. Please give... Oh, this is going against the rule of Parliament. This kind of comments, either you present your apologies.
I apologize for saying I'm trying to put order in your mind.
Apologize unconditionally.
But there's no condition attached.
That's it.
It's only your mind.
Unconditionally.
In your mind you
Please.
think there's a condition. There was never any condition.
Please, that is final.
Thank you.
My ruling is final and you have no point of
But
order.
I don't agree with your ruling.
It was a fraudulent point of order.
I don't agree with your ruling.
Give your reply, Minister.
Mr. Speaker, sir, with all due respect to the House, the reply that the question put forward by the honourable member again needs to be verified, because she is claiming, she's perpetrating that a minor has been forced to abandon his studies when he was doing very well in one academic institution, and he was forcibly placed in another academic institution. It all sounds very, very fictitious to me, and I will go and verify the authenticity of her claims. And allow me, Mr. Speaker, sir, to seize this opportunity to get the honourable member to appreciate that when it comes to the safety and protection of our children, who she claims to be a fervent proponent of their welfare, it is improper to choose to do such dirty politique de bas échelle on the back of our children. Yes, it is indeed very, very shameful.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, sir, she chooses to come and...
Order, both sides of the House. Order.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the honourable member of the opposition comes with valid question and...
Wait, Minister.
La ministre, Monsieur le Président, dans sa réponse, est en train d'impute motif pour dire que nous sommes en train de faire des dirty works. C'est pas ça, c'est nous faisons notre travail. Il se peut qu'elle ne soit pas d'accord, mais il n'y a pas de travail sale. C'est pas du côté de cette chambre qu'il y a de travail sale. Que je demande à la ministre de rectifier.
You made your point. You made your point. I'll give a ruling after. Continue.
Continue. Mr. Speaker, sir, contrary to what the honourable member of opposition are claiming to supposedly be doing their job, yes, if you do it with a decorum and with respect to the institution that is this House, then it is my duty as well to come and reply. You come and brandish a picture that is not even authentic. I can brandish the same thing where one member of your opposition published without any qualms the medical report of that same baby who has been admitted in ICU, whom you never even went to visit once. I am tabling this to show that this is authentic, it can be verified, and this is how low you guys go for your political mileage. Suivez mon regard.
We move to the next question. We move to the next question.
B38.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the statistics of the NC results 2022, subject-wise with respect to candidates of the extended program, both state and private secondary schools, have been uploaded on the website of the Mauritius Examination Syndicate and are in the public domain. The MES also prepares reports on the performance of students which are subsequently submitted to the respective schools. Mr. Speaker, sir, the educational reforms rest on the notion that the skills and competencies of all learners have to be developed to enable them to construct their future and lifelong learning. The House would recall that the curriculum of the extended program was meant to be covered over a period of 4 years. The strategy being to ensure that the students acquire the required knowledge and competencies over the 4 years. However, the first cohort of the extended program learners, because of the COVID-induced disruptions, did not benefit from the enhanced support as initially planned. Furthermore, the students needed additional support, and this was not possible. Nonetheless, Mr. Speaker, sir, it's worth noting that we have achieved the inclusiveness as far as, in the first cohort, 71 EP students have been successful and have joined the grade 10 regular stream. Some 487 are repeating the grade. We have also been informed that there are around 3,200 recruits admitted in MITD centers and ITET institutions. And these include students of grade 9 who have met the requirements for the NQF level 2 and obtained their NC certificate, as well as those from the extended stream, program stream.
In cognizance of the pass rate or high rate of failure of that extended program, first cohort, I would have liked if as minister you had cared for these kids, because this is a mal-adapted curriculum for them, Honorable Minister. I am not saying that. It is the World Bank which says that in its midterm report, saying that the curriculum is not adapted to the needs of EP, and the teaching and learning processes were not well tailor-made for individual needs of these students. It is high time we review this pedagogical aberration, Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to remind the Honourable Member that we have introduced the EP, the extended program, and we have been evaluating it periodically, and we are all right now working, we have a team, a committee working on how to improve the system. I would like to draw his attention that between 2005 to 2014, the pre-vocational stream that we had never undergone any form of evaluation, nor had there been any follow-up on what happened to those students. Whereas in our case, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have been following the student, we have been dealing with the World Bank, and what he has been talking about, the midterm report of the World Bank, it's something of the past. The World Bank is here right now, we are discussing with them, and we are working towards improving the extended program while making sure that these students are taken care of. This is what we have been doing, Mr. Speaker, sir, and it's totally unwarranted to talk about, quel terme que le monsieur a servi là? Pedagogical aberration. This is what he ought to think about, because I would like to remind the Honourable Member that when he was a rector, he did not even accept to have pre-vocational students in his school. So I have no lessons to learn from him.
Honourable members.
She has misled the House.
Honourable members. Honourable members. Honourable members. Honourable members, I am addressing the House. Keep your point of order. Question B49, 47, B53, B43, B46, B67, B80, B87, B63, B71, B41, B44, B50, B85, B69. Thank you for your silence. B85, B69, B107, B89, B97, B102, B75, B77, B79, B74, B42, B60, B70, B105, B48, B73, B40, all these questions have been withdrawn. Time is over. You meet me in my office for your point of order.
Motion. Motion.
Now I will ask you to withdraw that word that you mentioned.
Withdraw, but she will have to prove whatever she has said.
This is something.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, may I move that all the business on today's order paper be exempted from the provisions of paragraph 2 of Standing Order 10.
Seconded. The question is that all the paper be and that for paragraph 2, Standing Order 10 is seconded. Those say yes, those against say no. The ayes have it.
Statement by Minister.
Mr. Speaker, sir, with your permission, I wish to make a statement regarding the case of minor VR. On 17th of March 2023, the parents of Mauritian national VR, 17 years old, called at my ministry to seek assistance for the repatriation of their son from Iran. According to the parents, Master VR attended a wedding in Dubai through the invitation of an Iranian national. After the wedding, the person took minor VR to his family home in Iran. The parents of minor VR stated that the Iranian national then asked them for a large sum of money to ensure the return of their child to Mauritius. Faced with these demands, the parents reported the matter to the police in Mauritius and also sought the assistance of my ministry. Given that the last localization of the mobile phone of minor VR indicated that he was in Balochistan, a border region which straddles both Iran and Pakistan, my ministry sought the assistance of these two countries to search and rescue the minor. My ministry and our missions abroad followed the matter very closely. I am pleased to inform the House that on Monday, 27th March 2023, that is yesterday, my ministry obtained confirmation that firstly, minor VR had been found by the Iranian authorities in the town of Zahidan, city and capital of Sistan, Balochistan. Secondly, the alleged kidnappers had been arrested in the town of Kash in the Sistan, Balochistan province of Iran. Minor VR is presently in police custody in the said town of Zahidan. Following the necessary investigation, he would be transferred to Tehran for eventual repatriation. These developments were reported through the Mauritius Police Force to the family of minor VR on the same day. My ministry will continue to follow the matter until the safe return of the minor to Mauritius. I would like at this point, sir, to record our heartfelt appreciation to the Iranian authorities for their diligence in ensuring the liberation of the minor. In the same vein, I also wish to highlight the hard work done by our consular services, both at the level of my ministry and our diplomatic representations in Antananarivo and Islamabad.
Big Bills, first reading.
I move that the Waste Management and Resource Recovery Bill be read the first time.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I move that the Supplementary Appropriation 2022-2023 Bill number 2 of 2023 be read the first time.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I move that the Mauritius Digital Promotion Agency Bill number 3 of 2023 be read the first time.
A big bill, second reading.
Mr. Speaker, sir, it's with a sense of duty that the HIV and AIDS Amendment Bill number 19 of 2022 is being brought to this House. Before elaborating on the amendments that are being proposed, let me put forward a few historical facts. In the first few decades of the 20th century, in West Africa, an unknown virus made the jump from chimpanzees, which were its natural host, to humans. It was followed by a silent transmission for many years from human to human during decades. When the number of infected people started increasing. The first article was published in 1981 in a medical journal reporting 5 cases of suspected pneumonia among the gay community in Los Angeles. These were the first AIDS cases, but at that time, the name was not yet identified. The number of cases kept on growing, and in 1983, HIV, which stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus, was discovered. It was the human form of the SIV. The SIV stands for Simian Immunodeficiency Virus of chimpanzees that brings pathogenic diseases in humans under the name of HIV. So it's a kind of variant that has come up from SIV. We must make the distinction between HIV and AIDS. AIDS, which stands for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome, is the ultimate form of HIV infection. The first stage of HIV infection is the primary infection. It is the time when the virus enters the body and begins to develop. There are no symptoms in half of the cases, and in other half, there are symptoms similarly like a common flu. Because of this, persons does not know that the person doesn't know that he is carrying the virus, and almost in all cases, the infection is not identified. The duration of the primary infection lies between 3 weeks to 3 months. The second stage, known as the latent stage, lasts on average for about 8 to 10 years, during which there are no signs and symptoms of the HIV infection. For all these long years, the person infected with the virus doesn't know if he is contaminated. And the last stage of the virus is AIDS, and is characterized by the presence of opportunistic infections and opportunistic cancer. This means that the HIV virus causes infections and certain types of cancer. So there are 3 stages from the time one is infected with the virus till the time the virus completely invades the body and is manifested by AIDS. During that particular phase, HIV multiplies within the immune system and destroys the healthy cells progressively until the immune system is not able anymore to compensate for the destroyed cells. The mode of transmissions. There are 3 modes of transmission for HIV infection, which are blood-borne, that is from blood to blood, through unprotected sexual contact, and through mother-to-child transmission, that is during pregnancy, delivery, and breastfeeding. Mr. Speaker, sir, over the last 40 years, incredible progress has been made in the development of effective HIV medications. These advances have transformed this fatal disease into a chronic infection. With the advent of antiretroviral drugs, people living with HIV can suppress the virus, prevent onwards HIV transmission, and help HIV patients to lead a better quality of life. Mr. Speaker, sir, globally, according to the UNAIDS, out of the 84 million people ever diagnosed with HIV, about 40 million have died of AIDS. In 2021, an estimated 34.8 million people were living with HIV. In the same year, there were 1.5 million new HIV infections and 650,000 AIDS-related deaths. HIV and AIDS in Mauritius and Rodrigues In Mauritius, HIV was first reported in October 1987. From 1987 to 2022, a total of 8,331 Mauritian citizens have been diagnosed with HIV, out of which 6,334 males and 2,597 females. During that same period, 1,903 AIDS-related deaths have been registered. Concerning the mode of transmission, contamination from the year 1987 to 2000 was mostly by heterosexual route. From 2001 to 2005, the country witnessed an exponential rise in the number of new HIV cases among people who injected drugs. An average of 50 new HIV cases was registered each month, with the peak of the epidemic in 2005. More than 92% of the newly diagnosed cases were among people who injected drugs, which means that HIV transmission was bloodborne through sharing of needles and syringes. Mr. Speaker, sir, in Mauritius, the HIV prevalence is 1.2% in the population at large, with an estimated 14,000 persons living with HIV. The HIV epidemic is of concern to all Mauritians, but is concentrated among key populations, which comprise of people who inject drugs, female sex workers, men who have sex with men, and transgender persons. Subsequently, the potential risk of the HIV epidemic bridging to the population at large is of great concern. Let me point out that in Rodrigues, the situation is different, as the HIV infection is driven by sexual transmission among the youth and young adults. It is in this context of the highly significant representation of injecting drug users among the newly diagnosed HIV cases that the HIV and AIDS Act 2006 was enacted. This law makes provision for the needle exchange program and safeguards the rights of the people living with and affected by HIV. Its objective is to provide for measures to control the HIV epidemic and prevent further propagation of HIV and AIDS. The Act also makes provision for confidentiality, consent, counseling, upon which HIV testing is based. It also stipulates that testing for minors is to be carried out with written consent of the minor only, if he understands the nature of the test. Moreover, the methadone substitution therapy was introduced in 2006 to counter the effect of injecting drug use. Despite bold preventive measures and access to HIV testing, treatment, care, and support undertaken to contain the HIV infection within the high-risk groups, multiple challenges still exist and impede on the national response to the HIV epidemic. Mr. Speaker, sir, about half of the people living with HIV in Mauritius probably do not know their status. Stigma and self-stigma are the major barriers. The fear of rejection by their close ones, if found to be HIV positive, make people reluctant to get tested. The annual number of new HIV infections registered among Mauritians in the past 3 years has remained between 300 to 400. The Integrated Biological and Behavioral Survey of 2021, carried out by my ministry, shows that HIV is mostly prevalent among the key population. The statistics show that HIV is present in 21% of people who inject drugs, 14.3% of female sex workers, 17.2% of men who have sex with men, and 28% of transgender persons. The country hasn't been able to eliminate mother-to-child transmission despite the coverage of the prevention protocol being above 90%. The majority of the persons diagnosed with HIV are in the age group 25 to 34 years and are considered as high-risk groups for HIV because of their unsafe behaviors. Of the total number of people diagnosed with HIV, 18% are aged between 15 and 24 years, and 34% between 25 to 34 years. Despite tremendous efforts invested by the dedicated health and non-health care personnel, new HIV infections still occur. The UN-AIDS HIV estimates that between 2010 and 2021, HIV-related deaths among the all age groups increased by 23%, although it declined by 52% among children in Mauritius. AIDS-related death occurs mostly because of late diagnosis of the HIV infection and non-adherence to treatment. The adherence rate stagnated around 70% for the past 5 years, with approximately 1,200 people living with HIV considered as lost to follow-up. Active tracking of the lost to follow-up patients is ongoing and requires tremendous efforts to re-engage these persons into health care. Responding to the diverse needs of the different populations requires huge investment in human resource and ability for multitasking. History shows that Mauritius has always strived to control the HIV infection throughout its evolution by aligning with the international recommendations pertaining to testing, prevention, treatment, care, and support. UN-AIDS and international convention, the country is signatory to regional and global treaties on HIV and AIDS, the most significant ones being the global response of 3 zeros: zero infection, zero death, and zero discrimination. The UN-AIDS 2016 to 2021 strategy and the United Nations Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals. Mr. Speaker, HIV testing is the only way to know your HIV status and subsequently to access prevention, treatment, care, support, services, and also to take the necessary measures not to contaminate others. In case of a positive result, HIV screening allows the person to access treatment and undergo close monitoring. In case of an HIV negative result, and in absence of any potential exposure to the virus in 3 months preceding the test, the person is considered to be HIV negative. The person is encouraged to adopt safe behaviors to maintain the negative results. If the negative person has a very high risk of becoming infected, he can have access to PrEP. PrEP is pre-exposure prophylaxis. It is offered to HIV-negative persons at substantial risk for HIV due to their unsafe behaviors or recurrent exposure to HIV. In a serodiscordant couple, what is this? It is a couple where one of the partners is positive pre-exposure prophylaxis is also recommended. This service is available since 2018 and needs to be further promoted. PrEP is available at the HIV point of care services of the ministry, at the Banyan Center, located in the premises of New Villa under the management of NGO Pills. I take this opportunity to acknowledge the work of all the NGOs in the field of HIV, drugs, and key populations. We know very well that the work of the ministry and NGOs are complementary. Today, if we have achieved so much progress in the fight against HIV and AIDS, it is also thanks to the Global Fund to fight AIDS, which has been the main external funding body in helping the government to implement policies and strategies to fight HIV and AIDS during the last decades. Today, the government funds 82% of the fight against HIV and AIDS. Mr. Speaker, sir, my ministry is already providing a mix of HIV tests, such as mandatory HIV serological tests among blood donors and organ and tissue donors. Voluntary HIV counseling and testing are conducted at primary, secondary, and tertiary level of care, as well as in closed settings when a person opts for counseling and requests for HIV testing. Provider-initiated testing and counseling, which are carried out in health and non-health settings when trained healthcare or non-healthcare personnel proposes an HIV test to a person who may opt out. Several NGOs also provide HIV testing. Contextual analysis within which HIV services are operating led to the development of the new National Action Plan 2023-2027, a multi-sectoral, rights-based and patient-centered approach has been adopted to develop this action plan. It bears all the stakeholders' shared vision to achieve zero new HIV infections and zero death within a setting of an inclusive environment free from stigma and discrimination. The 2023-2027 National Action Plan for HIV articulates priorities and high-impact interventions in line with the mission to provide high-quality HIV prevention, testing, treatment, and care and support services accessible to all Mauritians. Its most prominent guiding principle is the universal health coverage to ensure that all individuals and communities receive the health services they need without financial hardship. In line with international recommendations to ending AIDS as a public health threat by 2030, bold measures have been undertaken by the Ministry of Health and Wellness to bridge any loopholes in the management of people living with, affected by, and at risk of HIV. Provisions of tailored combination of HIV prevention programs, which include a mix of behavioral, biological, and structural interventions, is prioritized to meet the needs of the specific high-risk groups. The existing preventive measures against HIV will allow Mauritians to take informed decisions that will impact positively on their quality of life. Mr. Speaker, sir, the HIV and AIDS Act of 2006 no longer responds to the framework suitable to fight HIV and AIDS and needs to be amended. This government, under the leadership of the Prime Minister Pravin Kumar Jagannath, is determined to offer all facilities to improve the HIV and AIDS response. We are today making history by introducing HIV self-testing and directly assisted HIV self-testing to upscale the number of people knowing their HIV status. For the first time, a person will be able to collect his own specimen of blood, perform a simple rapid diagnostic test, and interpret the result in line with the WHO recommendations of 2016. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is only through upscaling of HIV testing among the population that we will succeed in our endeavor to diagnose HIV at an early stage and reduce AIDS mortality rate. It is understood that all HIV testing should be in line with the HIV and AIDS Act and based on the 3 key principles of counseling, pre- and post-test, consent, and confidentiality. To ensure that the rights of the person to be tested is respected, no one should be coerced to undergo HIV self-testing and directly assisted HIV testing. While respecting the person's right, emphasis will be laid on the importance of partner notification on one's HIV status. In case of a potential HIV positive self-test result, the person will be encouraged to disclose his HIV status to his partner or partners. Even if the person doesn't want to disclose his HIV status to his partner, many studies have shown that knowledge of this status prompts a vast majority of people to take steps so as to refrain from contaminating others. My ministry will ensure that the HIV self-testing kits that will be on the market will be WHO pre-qualified. The HIV self-testing kits will also be sold in private pharmacies around the island. The amendments we are proposing to the HIV and AIDS Act of 2006. When a person is undergoing HIV self-testing and the result turns out to be positive, HIV confirmatory tests must be carried out at the Central Health Laboratory of the Ministry. A toll-free service, 800-0500, is available for assistance and in-depth pre- and post-test counseling. HIV self-testing, which is already routinely being implemented in more than 50 countries, has proven its worth. It is an additional and complementary screening device. A meta-analysis published in 2021 in The Lancet investigated the results of 14 self-test studies, including 13 in sub-Saharan Africa. This meta-analysis showed that people found to be HIV positive by self-test have the same rate of use and retention in care as people who have been found HIV positive by usual face-to-face test. The benefits of HIV self-testing at individual, community, and national levels are undeniable, as it leads to early HIV diagnosis and in the long run will help the government achieve its objective in halting HIV transmission. Moreover, the bill provides for the introduction of paraphernalia kits in the context of the needle exchange program to prevent HIV and other bloodborne infections such as hepatitis C and hepatitis B. Since the introduction of harm reduction strategies in 2006, including the needle exchange program and bloodborne infection, a general tendency towards a decrease in the prevalence of HIV infections among people who inject drugs has been noted. A decrease of some 21% according to the Integrated Biological and Behavioral Surveillance Survey of 2021. However, the prevalence of hepatitis C among people who inject drugs has remained around 8% 88.8%. Hence, the free distribution of paraphernalia kits has as main objective to decrease the incidence and prevalence of Hep C without minimizing that of HIV, hepatitis B, and other blood-borne infections. Mr. Speaker, sir, the main objective of the bill is to amend the HIV and AIDS Act so as to broaden the scope of HIV testing nationwide and allow for a greater number of people to know their status and to have access to access the HIV continuum of HIV services. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are proposing several amendments to the Principal Act. At Section 2, interpretation of the Principal Act is being amended to broaden the definition of HIV test by including a directed assisted HIV self-test or an HIV self-test. Under the same section, definitions are being provided for directly assisted HIV self-test, and paraphernalia kit. At Section 5, a new subsection is being inserted under this section to provide for private health institutions and pharmacies to make available facilities for a person to conduct an HIV self-test. At Section 7, a new subsection is being inserted to include that a person may conduct an HIV self-test or make a request for a directly assisted HIV self-test. At Section 11, a new subsection A1 is being introduced to provide for any person who conducts an HIV self-test, the result of which is reactive, to undergo an HIV test at a public health institution to confirm whether the test is positive. At sections 14, 15, and 16, provision is also being made to include paraphernalia kit under the needle exchange program, along with syringes and needles which are already provided to clients under the program. A full paraphernalia kit will be offered, including sterile cooker, alcohol swab, dry cotton swab, cotton filter, and sterile water. Mr. Speaker, sir, consultations with various stakeholders, including the World Health Organization and NGOs, have been undertaken during the consultative stage in the elaboration of this bill, and general consensus was reached for self-testing. My ministry will conduct rigorous targeted audience campaigns to inform the population at large on the importance of knowing their status, their HIV status, and the availability and accessibility of HIV self-testing and directly assisted HIV self-testing. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the Prime Minister, Honorable Pravin Kumar Jagannath, who chairs the National AIDS Committee and who is determined to contribute significantly that we get the closest possible to end HIV and AIDS in Mauritius. My thanks also go to the National AIDS Coordinator of my ministry and also to the Attorneys General Office for their precious inputs in the drafting of this piece of legislation. I thank you for your attention.
MP Omia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the outset, I would like to make a small comment on the figures that have been mentioned by the Minister with regards to 8,331 cases that have been detected since it has been recorded in Mauritius. However, it is also noted, and it is important to know, there is approximately 5,600 people who have not yet, who are undetected, which makes approximately 40%. While worldwide, we do know that the screening tests in most countries have only approximately 20% that are undetected, meaning thereby that obviously awareness, sensitization, and removing of barriers and access to testing is paramount in our fight against AIDS. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is indeed an honor and a privilege for me to address the House on such a particular bill which has profound implications for the health and safety of our nation, more so for the targeted cohort of the nation that face these issues. Mr. Speaker, sir, AIDS, HIV recognized worldwide since the early 1980s after its first case was described in the New York Native, has had a large impact on society, be it when it comes to illness or a source of discrimination. It has attracted international, political, social, and medical attention, as well as a large-scale state funding to curb its progression, and since it has been the center of medical attention in most highly reputed medical forums worldwide. Mr. Speaker, sir, access to diagnosis is paramount in HIV/AIDS, and lack of early diagnosis and treatment leads to a frightening survival time of only 11 years, with a high mortality rate, as mentioned by the Minister himself. Mr. Speaker, sir, approximately 60% of HIV-infected individuals are unaware of the infection, and stigma and discrimination continue to threaten acceptance in society and also access to HIV testing services worldwide. Mr. Speaker, sir, we do all know that one of the mainstays of the efficiency of any treatment for any medical condition is to have the proper diagnosis, but that has to be timely. We have all witnessed the evolution of HIV since the mid-80s, and this is a disease because of the stigma associated with it has caused those who are infected, who are suspected to be infected, to stay away from healthcare institutions or specialized units despite intensive awareness campaign. Mr. Speaker, sir, the treatment for AIDS and HIV are available today, ranging from antiviral to the most promising monoclonal antibodies, and the treatment of secondary infections as well as the rare cancer associated is a major game player in the overall care of HIV-positive people, so long we can identify them. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm one of those who believe that the bill presented today goes in a long way helping those who shunned from coming forward to acquire early diagnosis and subsequently seek treatment, because we do know that those who have had timely diagnosis and appropriate linkage to care and sought treatment had had a quality of life similar to those who are not affected, thanks to the major advances in therapeutics in the field of medicine. Their quality of life and expectancy of life, have they sought treatment early and given access to care, can mirror that of those who are unaffected. Mr. Speaker, sir, any accurate, widely acceptable, and easily accessible HIV screening test will firstly increase the rate of diagnosis, allow for an early antiviral therapy and treatment for the infected individual, and thirdly, decrease the likelihood of transmission to susceptible persons. Mr. Speaker, sir, HIV self-testing or directly assisted HIV self-test, also known as rapid test, is not something new, and such type of testing has had its landmark in the field of medicine, particularly in the fields of gynecology, where women who have missed the cycle have had to go to the rapid test. Notwithstanding, though, that these rapid testing have their own limitations in terms of false positive and false negative. Mr. Speaker, sir, likewise, we have all seen recently the number of rapid testing that have flooded the market during the highly infective period of the COVID-19. The main objective of people, ourselves, anybody in the population, rushing to get these tests done, having in mind only one thing: early diagnosis, early access to treatment, and prevention of contaminating others. And the same concept should apply here when we go access to those who are supposed to be infected or are positive, is to identify them. Mr. Speaker, sir, targeting the at-risk population is the mainstay of the eventual success of the medical program aimed at providing diagnosis and delivering care, be it at the doorstep of the people concerned. Therefore, same is to be emphasized as in mentioned in section 3 and subsection D of the bill, that once an at-risk person or suspected HIV positive have been found positive or call it reactive through the self-testing method, confirmatory tests should be mandatory, which is the usual ELISA testing. Mr. Speaker, sir, the one major obstacle to get tested, be it the at-risk population or else, is stigma and discrimination associated with AIDS. Stigma and discrimination may occur in various ways, such as ostracism, rejection, discrimination, and avoidance of HIV-positive people. Violence in different ways against those seeking treatment, against those seeking HIV testing or securing treatment. Or even women have faced gender-based violence from their partner, having known that they are positive. Mr. Speaker, sir, stigma can usually turn what is a manageable chronic disease into a death sentence. And that does not only apply to HIV/AIDS, it also applies to other fields of medicine where there are stigma and cultural taboos such as breast cancer, cancer of the genital areas. And therefore, unfortunately, that sort of stigma can perpetuate the spread of diseases, including when it comes to the field of HIV. Despite all the efforts put through to screen all pregnant women in the case of HIV and AIDS, and people attending antenatal clinic or even attending casualty, the Ministry is well aware that the uptake is quite poor, due probably and mainly the stigma and fear associated with the disease. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have no doubt that the mover of the bill has also considered stigma as a major obstacle to testing HIV/AIDS in the population. However, I have a concern particularly at section 8, subsection A, where it relates to any person, I quote, who conducts an HIV self-test, the result of which is reactive, shall undergo an HIV test at a public health institution to confirm whether the test is positive. I believe that this should come to a public institution, define the whole objective of attracting people to do self-testing and breaking the barrier of stigma and keeping them away from people they did not want in the first place to know they were positive. I humbly suggest that these people with reactive tests have a domiciliary blood test using all precautionary measures by qualified health personnel. Mr. Speaker, sir, the essential question today is, will the HIV self-test be used, and if so, by whom? Will it be the low-risk individuals, the worried well, they are well but worried, or by the high-risk individual who have evaded testing, who in fact need frequent testing, that is drug users, sex workers, the gay community? Here I have to point out that these people are the most at risk, and we hope that these people will make good of the service. Mr. Speaker, sir, rapid testing kits have been on the market for years, and I'm glad that this bill will enable those who need them most get access through. However, we will have to ensure, and I think I can remember the Honorable Minister just mentioned that these tests would be WHO qualified, if I'm not mistaken. I hope that these tests will be FDA, Federal Drug Agency, acceptable or approved in terms of the stringent quality criteria set of 95% sensitivity and specificity. I hereby request the Honorable Minister to ensure that no cheap, bogus tests get on the market in this regard, as this will probably and particularly attract interest for many who have no experience, no knowledge in medical or diagnostic practice, as we saw during the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, sir, HIV/AIDS self-testing or directly assisted HIV self-test, be it salivary or finger blood, be it in supervised or unsupervised setting, must not on any terms be considered as a replacement on conventional blood ELISA testing. Particularly, it should be seen as an alternative for those who did not seek to attend healthcare setting. Mr. Speaker, sir, the results of such HIV testing at home or being supervised can be life-changing, since it offers the direct advantage of delivering results in a fraction of time we would otherwise, but are unfortunately also subject to limitations that are an important consideration when being used and in its interpretation. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is surely a wide range of benefits of HIV self-testing, from acceptability to rapid availability of results, same-day treatment and support, increased confidentiality and privacy, far from the praying eyes of peeping toms, limits exposure and unwanted transmission of disease, mutual partner testing to increase awareness and decrease transmission, and avert condom-less sex between discordant partners. Mr. Speaker, sir, the health economics means it is a cheaper way of doing tests and getting broad access. And due consideration must be given for a non-obligatory nationwide testing, which can broaden the scope of HIV testing nationwide. Mr. Speaker, sir, all novel practice or inventions or diagnostic methods always raise certain concerns, and HIV/AIDS self-testing is no exception. One of the most debated concern is the concept of window period of self-testing. That is the period during which the test is not reliable in an already infected person, because such testing demands that a certain quantity of material be there for it to be positive. We are talking about the antibodies that are generated once somebody is infected. And this period can be anything between 3 weeks to 8 weeks before adequate seroconversion. Seroconversion meaning the production of adequate amount of antibodies that are detectable for a test to be valid has taken place. This brings, in a sense, this concept brings, in essence, the continuous need of clinically assessing at-risk or concerned individuals and the use of conventional testing as well as an opportunity to screen for sexually transmitted disorders, among which this particular group has a higher prevalence. Mr. Speaker, sir, once more, the issue of false negative can lead to false reassurance and promote sex during a time of highest infectivity. False negative will lead to missed opportunities of being counseled and linkage to care. Mr. Speaker, sir, while all these tests are available, still there are limits, whether it is conventional testing, whether it is self-testing, whether it is directly assisted tests, particularly in the cases of vertical transmission, where newborn babies who have been born from affected mothers unfortunately carry antibodies or material that are detected when we test for HIV-positive patients. These unfortunate babies sometimes fall in that gray area where there are still debate of whether they should be considered as positive or they have inherited antibodies from the mother and whether she should be treated or not. Mr. Speaker, sir, counseling. Counseling remains the central pivotal point of HIV/AIDS testing, be it pre-testing, because we need to do counseling at pre-testing level, because some people, we do not know their reaction once they found they are positive. Suicide has been mentioned in so many studies. And post-testing counseling, because these people, once they have been found to be positive, need to adjust their lifestyle to A, have access to treatment, accept the treatment, and change their methods as they've been having sex before. The importance of face-to-face counseling may depend on the region where testing are done, the culture of the people, and other sensitive factors, and is an area where the ministry must pay particular attention, and sufficient well-trained resource professionals must be available to suit the needs of those who have had different views of how society at large perceive them. This is a very important concept. How they feel society perceive them so that they will be welcome forward to have testing. Phone counseling must be a last resort. Mr. Speaker, sir, to conclude, definitely a move in the right direction to bring detection at doorstep in high-risk individuals, and hopefully the emergence of a well-defined, upgraded approach in counseling and linkage to care for those who unfortunately were tested positive or negative in the window period. I finally take the opportunity to thank all the NGOs involved in such a noble task with the HIV/AIDS sufferers, and I also extend my thanks to the gentlemen and the ladies sitting at the back of the minister, whom some of you I knew very well, have done a remarkable task. Thank you very much.
Honourable member, next time don't refer to strangers. You only have the right to refer to honourable members, elected members. I thank you for your cooperation. Honourable Minister.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you for this opportunity to share my views on the HIV and AIDS Amendment Bill number 19 of 2022, and I understandably start by congratulating my colleague, the Honourable Dr. Kailash Kumar Singh Jagatpal, the Minister of Health and Wellness, for coming up and introducing this bill to the House. And Mr. Speaker, sir, it is so refreshing to hear the Honourable Member who spoke before me and discovering that we are on the same wavelength, one of those rare occasions that we happen to be on the same wavelength. And him giving his satisfaction, expressing his satisfaction on this amendment. Mr. Speaker, sir, Mauritius has ratified the Sustainable Development Goals agenda, which makes a very clear commitment to using a fast-track method in order to end the AIDS epidemic by the year 2030. In addition to adopting and putting into practice worldwide recommendations, Mauritius is also signatory to various instruments on HIV and AIDS, as mentioned earlier by the mover of the bill himself. Mr. Speaker, sir, this government, our government, has made significant progress in the fight against HIV and AIDS, and it is commendable to note that we no longer stigmatize as much as used to before those who suffer from the virus and from AIDS. The government has constantly committed itself to enhancing the country's response to HIV and AIDS by focusing on preventive measures and by offering free services to all individuals and communities afflicted by these. The government also offers free voluntary counselling and testing, and I think this should come as a reassurance to the Honourable Member who spoke before me and laid much emphasis on the importance, rightly so, of counselling and testing. The government offers free antiretroviral medications, methadone, and a needle exchange program, as mentioned by the mover of the bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, the 95-95-95 goals were introduced by the Joint United Nations Programme on HIV/AIDS in 2014, aiming at ending the AIDS epidemic as a public health threat by 2030. And this, Mr. Speaker, sir, is a very foundation. It is a guiding principle of the National Action Plan for HIV and AIDS. Awareness on the virus and AIDS is very important in order to safeguard our population and to curb the transmission of HIV. To educate the public about HIV and AIDS, stigma and discrimination, and patients' rights to health, sustain media campaigns, event-based radio and TV programs, and awareness sessions are conducted. We have trained NGOs, social workers, and healthcare assistants to perform HIV testing and offer counseling. Investment in programs like methadone substitution therapy, addictology units, detoxification and rehabilitation facilities for substance abusers are concrete examples of the government's commitment to eradicating AIDS by the year 2030. Mr. Speaker, sir, these tangible measures are the result of dedication at the highest level of governance, and here I wish to place on record my appreciation to the Prime Minister, who himself chairs the High-Level Drugs and HIV Council, and that demonstrates his noble commitment to stopping drug trafficking, substance abuse, as well as ensuring that administrative bottlenecks are removed in order to completely implement the National Drug Control Master Plan 2019-2023, a master plan, Mr. Speaker, sir, which is in itself is yet another testimony of the Prime Minister's personal advocacy to meet our national objectives. Mr. Speaker, sir, these actions are enhancing our approach and helping us adopt a better AIDS response in terms of policy making, policy coordination, all of which are intimately related to HIV prevention, care, and support. I have no doubt that given the successful management of the unpredicted COVID-19 pandemic throughout the world and in our country, we shall, under the leadership of our Prime Minister, succeed in this endeavor as well, which is to eliminate and why not one day eradicate the HIV and AIDS pandemic. Mr. Speaker, sir, once again, I concur with the honourable member who spoke before me that indeed women worldwide living with HIV experience stigma and exclusion, and this should not be the case. I seize this opportunity to make an appeal here in this House to stop any such stigmatization of our women in the Republic. It is a known fact that unfortunately HIV infections are transmitted sexually or via mother-to-child transmission during pregnancy, during childbirth, or breastfeeding even. Evidence also demonstrates that women who are HIV positive are more prone to experiencing gender-based violence and exclusion, as very rightly pointed out by the honourable member who spoke before me. The risk of HIV transmission is increased by sexual violence, Mr. Speaker, sir. HIV positive or women suffering from AIDS may more often than not experience conflict with their husband and their in-laws and the family members, accompanied by taboos, lack of proper education, all of which contribute to increased stigmatization, which, like I said, more often than not, lead to breakdown of family structures. That is why, Mr. Speaker, sir, we need to sensitize the population. We need to encourage people to make use of these FDA-regulated and approved self-test kits as a gateway to prevention and treatment. We should not only support women living with HIV to rehabilitate themselves, but we should fully integrate them in the developmental mainstream, because their contribution is most significant from the point of view that they are the one who have been the one receiving the treatment, they have been the one at the brutal end of stigmatization. Mr. Speaker, sir, while in some countries access to HIV prevention and treatment is very much hampered by a lack of health coverage for pregnant women, fortunately, in Mauritius, expectant mothers visiting public health and private health facilities have free access to the National Protocol for Preventing Mother-to-Child Transmission, which in itself is crucial to the elimination of new infections. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is distressing, though, to note that among cases reported of child abandonment, and here I speak en cause de connaissance concerning my ministry, there are some cases of babies abandoned, babies born with congenital anomalies, and my ministry is aware of the fact that most times, in many cases, the mother has either been a victim of substance abuse or was unaware of her HIV or AIDS status, or even victim of gender-based violence because of that status. These are all very real and unfortunate circumstances which my ministry comes across more often than not. Mr. Speaker, sir, what I'm trying to say is that these situations transcend all political barriers, and they should not be subjected to use for political gains ever. I'm not going to go on about how sometimes I have noticed, and the House has paid attention to how some members unfortunately stoop to a level whereby they use these cases of unfortunate children born from mothers suffering from such conditions. These cases are used to obtain political mileage. Unfortunately, we have witnessed this in this House. I'm urging those members to please go and try to stop doing that in future. It is unfortunate. Mr. Speaker, sir, human rights, you know I'm right. Human rights are essential to effective national responses to HIV. When HIV-positive individuals' human rights are not upheld, that is when stigma and discrimination occur. Fortunately, the Equal Opportunities Amendment Act of 2011 guarantees in Mauritius that everyone has an equal opportunity to achieve their goals in a variety of contexts, and that nobody is put in a situation of disadvantage due to their status, whether it is their gender, their sexual orientation, or any impairment. As a result, the Act forbids any type of status-based discrimination, whether it be direct or indirect. Mr. Speaker, sir, this government, through the HIV and AIDS Amendment Bill, is once again reiterating its commitment to go many steps further, placing our citizens at the heart of its developmental policies and in its quest to sustain its human-centric approach for a healthier generation and a better tomorrow to leave a better legacy to our Republic. Mr. Speaker, sir, this bill seeks to consolidate on preventive measures and to empower every citizen to take responsibility regarding their health and also their HIV status, but in a much more dignified manner. It is very laudable that now those HIV self-test kits will enable citizens to perform these tests in the comfort of their home, and in doing so, be the first one to take cognizance of their status, whether they are HIV positive or not, as opposed to what is a current legal requirement, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the promotion of public's right to health and the removal of obstacles to receiving those health services, including those for HIV, will be ongoing to help manage people living with HIV, to improve the standard of care and to keep patients in the medical system. The provision of integrated HIV services is being strengthened, and I think the Honourable Dr. Omer will be reassured to hear that on World, I'm sure he must have read it in the news as well, that on World AIDS Day, the Honourable Dr. Jagatpal officially inaugurated the first community sexual health clinic to better care for patients with HIV and AIDS, and this is a first of its kind centre which is going to be offering a variety of services to tackle from stigma to counselling to psychosocial care and medical support as well. Mr. Speaker, sir, with the provisions of this bill, women, young people, adults can now learn their HIV status in a quick, dignified, like I said, and empowering manner via these self-testing kits. One can take the kit to the comfort of their home. HIV self-test can be very helpful in bridging the gap between people with the virus and others who are aware or unaware of their status. To conclude, Mr. Speaker, sir, we agree, and I think it is unanimous in this House, we agree that self-testing is a powerful strategy. It's something I believe is going to fundamentally alter the playing field. To enhance the quality of life of our citizens and to care for their health, Mr. Speaker, sir, this government is investing tremendously in health infrastructure, as everybody can note, with the construction of area health centres, community health centres, mediclinics, as well as specialised health centres like the new ENT hospital, the new eye hospital, the upcoming new FLAC teaching hospital, amongst others. Once again, we are placing the well-being of our population at the forefront of all priorities, and we are proud to have a Prime Minister who acts and works hard rather than just cause, as per his commitment to serve his citizens of this republic. Mr. Speaker, sir, protecting the health of the nation has been given highest priority by the Prime Minister and his government in all decisions. And this bill is yet another constant which proves that the health of our population will remain a top priority. This government is adopting effective HIV responses with a more humane approach. The rights of those who have HIV and are impacted by it will be better protected through this amendment. This government has always, despite many unprecedented challenges it had to face, and the one that comes to mind is obviously COVID-19, we have remained true to our commitment to leave no stone unturned to ensuring that the well-being of our citizens are always high on the agenda. Mr. Speaker, sir, I highly commend our Prime Minister for his leadership. I also seize this opportunity to congratulate my honourable colleague, the second to none, Dr. Jagat Pal, for coming up with this amendment. And I also put on record my appreciation for the work, the tremendous work by all the non-governmental organizations, the NGOs that play a crucial role in the fight against HIV and AIDS. I thank you all for your attention. Long live the Republic of Mauritius. Thank you.
Honourable members, I'll suspend the sitting for half an hour.